Mind your own business, Helen. Those 5 words hung in the air between us as my daughter-in-law Rebecca stood in my kitchen, arms crossed, face flushed with anger. I'd only suggested that maybe, just maybe, my grandson shouldn't be playing those violent video games right before bed. After 7 years of helping raise my grandchildren, of Sunday dinners and emergency babysitting and midnight fever calls, I was suddenly an outsider. I nodded slowly, stirring the soup I'd been making for their family dinner. "You're right," I said quietly. "I should." What Rebecca didn't realize was that I meant it. Completely. If my help was interference, then maybe it was time I stopped helping altogether. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from taking someone exactly at their word. I've lived in this small 3-bedroom house on Willow Lane for 35 years. It's where I raised my only son, Michael, after his father left when he was just 4 years old. The kitchen has always been my favorite place. Warm yellow walls, plants crowding the windowsill, and a round oak table that's hosted countless family meals. The house sits just 3 blocks from Michael and Rebecca's place, close enough that my grandchildren, Ellie and Jake, used to ride their bikes over after school nearly every day. Being a single mother wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs most of Michael's childhood, administrative assistant during the day and waitressing 3 nights a week. There were times I could barely keep my eyes open, but somehow we managed. Michael grew into a kind, hard-working man, the kind who calls his mother regularly and remembers birthdays without reminders. When he met Rebecca 12 years ago, I was thrilled. She was smart and ambitious, with a warm laugh and dreams of becoming a partner at her marketing firm. Their wedding was small but lovely, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to gain a daughter rather than lose a son. When Ellie came along 2 years later, followed by Jake 3 years after that, my world expanded in ways I never thought possible. There's something magical about being a grandmother, all the joy of children with fewer of the worries. Our relationship, Rebecca's and mine, wasn't perfect, but it was good. We had different approaches to certain things. She was more structured, more modern in her parenting, while I tended toward the free-range style that necessity had taught me. Still, we respected each other, or so I thought. I was careful not to overstep, to always ask before buying the children clothes or treats, to never contradict her parenting decisions in front of the kids. At least, that's how I remember it. Looking back, maybe there were signs I missed, little moments of tension that I brushed away in my eagerness to be needed, to be part of their lives. It started with small things. Rebecca began declining my offers to pick up the children from school, saying they'd enrolled in after-school programs. The invitations to family dinner became less frequent, from twice a week to once, then to every other week. When I did visit, I noticed Rebecca would tense up when I interacted with the children, especially if I suggested anything about their care or activities. "Grandma, can I have another cookie?" Jake asked one afternoon during a rare visit to my house. Before I could answer, Rebecca jumped in. "We're having dinner in an hour, Jake. You know the rules." "Just one more wouldn't hurt," I said lightly, remembering how Michael had always had my homemade cookies after school. Rebecca's eyes flashed. "We're trying to teach healthy eating habits, Helen." I backed down immediately, not wanting to cause a scene. But these moments began happening more frequently. If I suggested Ellie might need a sweater in the cool evening air, Rebecca would pointedly say that her daughter knew her own body temperature. If I mentioned that Michael had struggled with math at Jake's age and might need extra help, she'd reply that they had his education under control. Then came the incident with the science fair. 10-year-old Ellie had been struggling with her project, something about plant growth and different types of water. Michael had mentioned it during a quick coffee visit. "She's frustrated," he said, running his hand through his hair, a gesture so like his childhood self that my heart squeezed. "We've been so busy at work, and Rebecca's got that big client presentation." "I could help," I offered. "You know I kept that garden for 20 years. I know a thing or two about plants." Michael looked relieved. "That would be great, Mom. Maybe tomorrow after school?" The next day, Ellie came over bubbling with ideas and questions. We spent hours setting up her experiment, taking photos for her display board, and working on her hypothesis. She was just like her father, curious, meticulous, a perfectionist. By the time Rebecca came to pick her up, we'd made significant progress. "Wow," Rebecca said, looking over the neat rows of seedlings and the detailed journal Ellie had started. Her tone was flat, her smile tight. "This looks elaborate." "Grandma knows so much about plants," Ellie exclaimed. "She helped me fix everything." I saw something shift in Rebecca's expression. "I thought you were just going to give her a few pointers," she said to me, her voice carefully controlled. "The whole point of a science fair is for the student to do their own work." "I just guided her," I explained. "All the ideas are hers." "Mom helped me understand the experiment better," Ellie added, not sensing the tension. On the drive home, I watched them from the window. I could see Rebecca talking animatedly in the front seat, Ellie's expression falling. The next day, Michael called to say they'd decided to take a different approach to the project. Ellie didn't come over for help again. The final straw came on a Tuesday evening. I'd stopped by to drop off a casserole because I knew both Michael and Rebecca had late meetings. The children let me in, and we chatted about their day as I heated up dinner for them. Jake mentioned his trouble sleeping lately. "Maybe it's those video games," I suggested gently. "Your dad used to get all wound up from too much screen time before bed." That's when Rebecca walked in, earlier than expected. She'd heard my comment from the hallway. "Mind your own business, Helen." The words were like ice water. "We don't need your outdated parenting advice. Michael and I decide what's appropriate for our children." After those words in the kitchen, something shifted inside me. I finished stirring the soup, turned off the stove, and quietly excused myself. As I drove the short distance home, tears blurred my vision, but beneath the hurt was a strange sense of clarity. For years, I'd shaped my days around my son's family, always available, always willing to step in, often rearranging my own plans to accommodate theirs. I'd turned down a part-time job at the community garden, missed book club meetings, even postponed a minor surgery once when Ellie had the flu and Rebecca needed help. All because I believed family came first, because I thought I was needed, wanted. That night, I sat in my quiet living room and really thought about Rebecca's words. Mind your own business. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps it was time I figured out what my business actually was, after all these years of making everyone else's business my priority. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I pulled out a notebook and began to write. All the things I used to enjoy before my life revolved around grandchildren. Gardening, book clubs, travel, volunteering, friendships I'd let fade. I made another list of the ways I helped Michael and Rebecca. Childcare, approximately 15 hours a week, cooking meals, twice weekly, shopping for children's clothes and school supplies, attending school functions when they couldn't, the occasional house cleaning when Rebecca was on deadline. Then I made a third list. What I would do if I truly minded my own business. When Michael called that evening to ask if I could take the kids for the weekend because he and Rebecca had been invited to a last-minute work retreat, I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, but I can't this time," I said, my heart pounding. "I've made other plans." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Mom, are you okay? You never have other plans." The fact that my own son was surprised I might have a life of my own only strengthened my resolve. "I'm perfectly fine," I replied. "I've just decided to mind my own business for a while." "What does that mean? Is this about what Rebecca said?" "She was just stressed, Mom." "It's about me needing to remember who I am beyond being your mother and the children's grandmother," I explained. "I love you all, but I think it's time I had my own life again." After we hung up, my hands were shaking. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The next few weeks were both harder and easier than I expected. Harder because the house felt too quiet without the children's regular visits. Easier because, for the first time in years, my time was truly my own. I signed up for a pottery class I'd been eyeing for months. I reconnected with my old walking group. I volunteered at the community garden 3 mornings a week. I slept in when I wanted to, ate what I wanted when I wanted, and rediscovered parts of myself that had been dormant for too long. Michael called frequently, confusion and hurt in his voice. "The kids miss you, Mom." "I miss them too," I said honestly. "They're welcome to visit any time. You all are." Rebecca's really swamped at work, and without you helping with pickup and dinner, I let the silence stretch between us. This was the hardest part, not immediately offering to help, not rushing in to solve their problems. Maybe you could look into after-school programs, I suggested gently, or take turns leaving work early. He sighed. It's not the same. I know, I said. Change rarely is. 3 weeks in, Rebecca called. My heart jumped when I saw her name on my phone. She'd never called me directly before. Helen, she said, her voice tight, I think we need to talk. We met at a small cafe halfway between our houses. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Michael says you're taking some kind of break from the family, she began. I stirred my tea slowly. Not from the family, just from being the family's backup plan. Her eyebrows rose. Is that how you see yourself? As a backup plan? It's how I've been treated, I said carefully. Available when needed, but told to step back when my help looks too much like involvement. She flinched slightly. About what I said? You told me to mind my own business, I interrupted gently. And you were right. I should have been doing that all along, finding my own interests, my own life, setting better boundaries. But the kids? I love Ellie and Jake more than anything, I said. That hasn't changed. My door is always open to them. But I'm not free childcare, or emergency meals, or a last-minute sitter anymore. If you want me involved in their lives, it needs to be as their grandmother, someone with experience and love to offer, not just services. Rebecca stared at her untouched coffee. We've been struggling, she admitted. I didn't realize how much we relied on you until you weren't there. Sometimes we don't see the value of what we have until it's gone, I said, not unkindly. I was jealous, she said suddenly, the words seeming to surprise her as much as me. The way the kids light up around you, how easily you connect with them, it made me feel inadequate somehow. Understanding dawned. All this time, I'd thought she was pushing me away because she didn't want my help, but perhaps it was because she needed it too much. Being a mother is the hardest job in the world, I told her, especially when you're trying to be a professional at the same time, something my generation rarely had to balance. How did you do it? Raise Michael alone? I laughed softly. Imperfectly, with a lot of tears and doubts, but with love, always with love. For the first time in years, we really talked, not about schedules or the children's needs, but about the challenges of motherhood, the weight of expectations, the fear of failure. By the time we left the cafe, something had shifted between us. Not fixed, not entirely, but changed. 6 months have passed since Rebecca told me to mind my own business. My life looks different now, fuller in some ways, quieter in others. I still see my grandchildren, but on more structured terms. Sunday dinners have returned, now hosted at their house as often as mine. I attend school events and special occasions, but no longer rearrange my entire life at a moment's notice. Last week, Rebecca called and asked if I'd help Ellie with another science project. She specifically requested you, Rebecca said, a smile in her voice. Apparently, her last project with you got an A+. I'd love to, I replied. How about Thursday, after my pottery class? The thing is, minding my own business didn't mean loving my family any less. It meant loving myself enough to have boundaries. It meant teaching my son and daughter-in-law that respect goes both ways. It meant showing my grandchildren that Grandma is a person with her own life and interests, not just someone who exists to serve their needs. Yesterday, Ellie asked me about the new pottery pieces displayed on my shelf. Did you make those, Grandma? They're beautiful. I did, I told her. It's something I always wanted to try. Can you teach me sometime? She asked, eyes bright with interest. I'd love to, I said. When you're ready to learn, I'm ready to teach. Later, as the family gathered around the dinner table, a table I hadn't prepared the food for, hadn't set, hadn't stressed over, I caught Rebecca watching me. "You seem happy, Helen," she said quietly. "I am," I replied. "Happier than I've been in a long time." She nodded thoughtfully. "I think we all are. Turns out, when you started minding your own business, we had to learn to manage ours better." Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our loved ones is the space to find their own way. And sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves is remember that we matter too, not just for what we give to others, but for who we are on our own.